rising temperatures. The last decade was, of course, the hottest decade on record. Last month was the hottest September on record. Severe weather. We know from climate reports that we can anticipate that there will be more severe drought in the future and more severe flooding in various parts of the world. That is not going to improve at all. Oceans. The annual amount of fish that we take from the oceans was peaked in 1996 at 83 million tons. It's been in decline, gradual decline ever since. 90% of all large fish populations have disappeared. And now we are endangering the coral reefs. Loss of biodiversity. Biologists warn that human activity is resulting in what they call the sixth mass extinction, the greatest extinction of plant and animal species since the dinosaurs were wiped out 65 million years ago. Failing states, I want to mention this because when you look at world population where it's growing, it's primarily growing in the poorest, least developed countries on the planet today, the so-called failing states. Countries like Pakistan and Yemen and Somalia will double or triple their population in the next 40 to 50 years. And my greatest concern and what drives my passion for this issue is the issue of food. We have about 900 million people today in the world who are chronically hungry. The UN says we need to increase food production in the next 40 years by 70% to keep up not just with population but changing diet because of rising meat consumption. A scientist here at the University of Minnesota said that's wrong, that we will in fact have to double food production. And whatever happens, we know that in the developing country where population is going to more than double, we will need to at least double food production. Biologists and scientists have been saying for years that we have been exceeding planetary boundaries and that we should be concerned about the future of the planet and its ability to sustain human life as we have known it. But how many people here have heard of Jeremy Grantham? Jeremy Grantham is the head of GMO. He is considered to be the most successful investor of the past decade. He manages over $100 billion in assets. And he recently wrote a quarterly letter to his clients, and this was the headline: "Time to wake up. Days of abundant resources and falling prices are over forever." In the 20th century, we created great abundance, and it was our task really to spread that abundance around the world. In the 21st century, the emerging challenge is our need to manage scarcity. Now that I've thoroughly depressed all of you, I think it's probably time for a little bit of news, because I didn't come here today to depress you. What gets me up in the morning is not a gloom and doom forecast. What gets me up in the morning is that there is real hope and there is real promise. So let me talk about that, what I mean by that. First of all, population projections are not written in stone. The United Nations puts out every 2 years a population forecast, and you can see they do 3 different variants. They do a high variant, a medium variant, and a low variant, and when you look out towards the end of the century, the results are dramatically different. Take a closer look at those numbers. First of all, if birth rates were to stay the same right now, if they were not to change, what would happen to world population? Right now it's 7 billion. If birth rates did not change, no change in fertility, by 2050 we would have 11 billion people on the planet, and by the end of the century we would have 27 billion people on the planet. Fortunately, I don't know of any demographer who expects that birth rates will not continue to decline. Everyone expects birth rates will continue to decline. The UN has a medium variant, second line variant, which is a commonly used forecast. When you hear people talking about the future, 2050, they'll say, oh, we're going to have 9.3 billion people. That's the forecast that we refer to. And it's based upon certain assumptions regarding declining fertility. And it says that it will continue to grow and reach 10 billion by the end of the century. But these forecasts are remarkably sensitive to even small changes in fertility rates. If fertility rates were a half point lower, I'm going to jump to the last slide, the last column there, the low variant. If they were a half point lower, we would see population continue to rise to around 8.1 billion, but very shortly thereafter it would begin to decline and would reached 6.2 billion. And that's only with a half-child difference between the official UN forecast. And here's where I think, let me tell you just very briefly, we have a sister organization called the Population Media Center, and what they do is they do soap operas for social change, and that may seem like an oxymoron. But what we've discovered, and what other people discovered, not just our organization, is that in developing countries, you can reach people through radio soap operas and providing positive role models about keeping girls in school, delaying age of marriage, having smaller families, and the benefits of having smaller families, that you can really achieve dramatic results. We've seen dramatic results in country after country where these type of soap operas have run. And they've been very, very effective, not just on related fertility, but issues relating to the status of women, violence against women, in changing attitudes and behaviors. Most importantly, we know tremendous benefit that comes with empowering girls. It's small investments, even investments like feeding girls lunch at school, can have a dramatic impact in terms of keeping girls in school, improving their prospects, and in delaying age of marriage, empowering them, and providing for an overall boost to their household and their community. And we know from experience in many countries around the world today that expanding the availability of contraceptions and the range of birth control options leads to lower fertility rates. And that if we were to spend as much as $4 billion a year, which in the scope of even the foreign assistance, let alone the scope of the global economy, is nothing, that we could provide family planning to another 230 million women in developing countries today, and that it would have a dramatic impact upon fertility rates in those countries, boosting education and so forth, and I'll come back to that in a second. But the really good news is that let's ignore the issue of population for a second and pretend that we live in a planet with infinite resources, which we don't. But it just makes tremendous sense to spend that additional investment of $4 billion, because when we invest in family planning and reproductive health services for women, we know that maternal health will improve, in many cases dramatically. Maternal deaths will decline dramatically. The number of abortions will decline. Infant death rates will fall. Child health will improve. Mothers, and this is very important in the developing world, mothers will live long enough to see their children grow up and their grandchildren survive. We know that when we do this, we also slow the spread of HIV/AIDS, that the level of educational attainment will go up, the rate of poverty will go down, gender equality will be advanced, food security will be enhanced, fewer people will go hungry or starve. Now here's the really good news. As a Rotarian, I'm very proud of the fact that the Rotary Action Group on Population Development really has been leading the way in this, providing not just family planning services, but maternal health services. They really are doing a tremendous job. Our FPD, this is more commonly known now, has over 20,000 members worldwide. They support Rotary volunteers, 100 Rotary volunteers in 84 countries. They have successfully completed more than 100 projects in developing countries, and they are today receiving a lot of funds from outside of Rotary through foundations, which I think is really a tribute to the effectiveness and importance of their work. And with our new Rotary focus on maternal and child health, RFPD is playing a very vital and important role. They operate in a number of countries. I'm most familiar, because they've done some work in conjunction with our sister organization, with the work they've done in northern Nigeria. And in northern Nigeria, they have trained thousands of doctors, midwives, and community health leaders. They have trained 10,000 traditional birth assistants. They have introduced quality assurance in a comprehensive approach to reduce maternal mortality and made great strides in that, and also fetal or infant mortality. They've also, in the process, done great work on HIV/AIDS, but also on the problem of obstetric fistula, which I hope that you've heard about, because it's a very significant problem in the developing world, where young brides get pregnant at the age of 12 or 13, have an obstructed pregnancy, and as a result, suffer very dire consequences in terms of health and oftentimes made outcast. The programs run by RPD have made a great impact there on obstetric fistula. This is one woman's testimony, saying that this service has completely turned my life around for the better. Socially, there are better relations with my husband now, that we know that not every intercourse will result in pregnancy. My health is better now, and I always say thanks to God and the Hajj Allah. That's a 36-year-old woman in northern Nigeria. I want to go back, though, to this is my last slide. This is the slide I showed you earlier about that this is really about people. That, as you know, going back to the earlier part I talked about here, we face in the world today a lot of intractable problems. A lot of problems that appear to be unsolvable. And many of the problems that we face today, when you try to fix one problem, you make another global problem worse. The trade-offs between energy and global warming, the trade-offs between energy and food, the food and global warming, all these are very significant trade-offs, and they all amount to very difficult decisions. But providing family planning assistance is a no-brainer. It's what I call a win-win-win proposition. It's a win for the woman and her family. It's a win for her community and her country. And it's a win for the planet. And there aren't many win-win-win propositions out there today, but this happens to be one of them. And I'm very proud of the work that Rotary's done on it, that Dave's worked on this issue. And I thank you very much for asking me here today. I'll be happy to take questions.